perhaps we can go ahead and take roll, and I'll go ahead and I'll send out the attendee link.
Perfect. Thanks, Adrian. So let's go ahead and do the roll call.
Yes. Hold on one second. Yes. Member Landry. Member Landry. Member Frank.
Present.
Member Liu.
Present.
Member Swaminathan.
Here.
Member Lakshman.
Yeah, I'm here.
Member Talria. Member Talria. Member Pacheco.
Here.
Member Sutter.
Present.
Member Hernandez. Member Lutz. Member Eldridge. And Chair Mutzenberg.
Here. All right. Sounds like we have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
So thank you, Adrian. The next item that we have on the agenda is public comment, which is reserved for individuals wishing to address the committee on any EBCE related matters not otherwise mentioned on the agenda. And so with that, Adrian, if we're able to open a public comment.
Yes, we have two speakers, Tom Kelly and Blair Beekman. Tom Kelly, I am unmuting you now.
Thank you, Adrian. Tom Kelly, Berkeley. I think it's 5 months ago now, I approached the CAC with a request that we find out more about why EBCE's emissions intensity for Bright Choice was so remarkably high. And just for people who don't remember, in 2020, when it was last measured formally, EBCE came out with 590 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour of electricity consumed. PG&E was 160 pounds, and all the other CCAs in Northern California were below 100, and one, I think, was actually at 0. And after raising this issue for 4 straight months, I was told that we would actually address it. And what we got was a report on basically how these emissions were measured and the fact that there was a change in the way that they were measured. But the bottom line is that every other CCA in the region looked much better than us. PG&E was much better than us. And we formed EBCE in order to do something about emissions and greenhouse gases, and we've done nothing. In fact, it's only gotten worse since 2018, where we were at about 100 pounds of CO2. So what I'd like to ask is, I noticed that people can give presentations to this board. I'd like to request an invitation to do that next month, to just show you what's going on around the region in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and just how badly EBCE is performing in that area. Now, there are reasons for it, but I don't think they're justified. All the other CCAs and PG&E had to deal with the same issue, and EBCE had basically fumbled it. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that MCE is reporting a drop of 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour on the PCIA, which will also apply to EBCE to some extent. And I'd like to know if whatever savings we get on that PCIA charge is going to be passed along to customers, or is it just going to be put into EBCE's pot and identified as some kind of net reserves or profits. So I'll leave it there. Those are my two things. I'd like to talk to the board formally about the emissions, and I'd like to know more about what's happening with the PCIA. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, hold on one second. Blair Beekman, I am unmuting you. now. Hold on one second.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. Nice to see everybody. I haven't attended a EBCE meeting in a few months now, and a lot's been going on. I've been attending EBCE meetings since at least January 2020, if not soon, if not, the fall of 2019. Boy, when I came here first time, I've been really impressed with your public meeting process. I came initially from San Jose area. In San Jose, for their community energy program, it's run by Laura Mitchell. She's a really interesting person. It was often talked about how we would have to be preparing, from about 2018 when San Jose Community Energy first started. The talk was always, how do we prepare? How will we be preparing for the year 2023? I arrived at your place around 2020, very impressed with how you guys work the public meeting process and such. And by 2020, the fall, the IPR reports in October, there was statistical data that was stating that by the year 2023, there was going to be a major rise in fossil fuel uptake, needs. And solar and storage energy ideas were going to flatline and not be on a continual rise as it should be. I took that statistical data as something a bit cautionary and to be worried about. And so, I put it together that was possibly we're preparing for a large earthquake in 2023. And I've mentioned it to yourselves often, how if we can talk about that subject openly and make it clear, that's good prep practices for a community to do. And San Jose is actually practicing good natural disaster preparedness practices for our community in that way. And it's a very nice gesture. But I don't know if that's actually what to expect in 2023. And the recent events of Putin and Russia, maybe what we're preparing for is that there's going to be a major push of US fossil fuel in the next year. And we at EBC and local community energy really have to fight strongly to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, you have a really good agenda item tonight that will prepare us for that and help develop that. And thank you. That's all I wanted to say tonight. I'm learning as I go how to talk about, events for our future, how we talk about that here in public well and in decent terms, and just an overall, good luck how we can be clear with each other what to expect in the next year and make that clear in our continued good efforts towards renewables. We ended that, I can't remember the assembly bill number. It ended with the 49 that was all into fossil fuels, taking over the solar power industry again. We stopped that. We said, let's build renewables. We're going to have to face that again with Putin and right now. Let's do that. And I know there's a timer at my end here, and I'll just say good luck how we can work on our continued efforts of renewables. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alita Dupree, you are unmuted.
Thank you again to the chair. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her need a clock. It would be helpful. If you can't get a clock, could you give me a 30-second warning so I can wrap up? Thank you. I speak in general terms about EBCE, an organization I'm very passionate about. I got to spend a few days in Emeryville over the weekend, a place I enjoy. And how can we get the awareness of EBCE out? Because being that EBCE is a CCA and that not all accounts are on EBCE, I have no idea whether the residence that I was staying in is a customer of EBCE. I would hope so. And I would hope that if they are, that they would be getting 100% renewable power. But those are answers generally not available to those of us who are simply paying rent for a room. So I think that some kind of awareness, maybe companies can put stickers on their doors, say that they are proud customers of EBCE, especially 100% renewable. I did ride BART a couple of times, and BART actually is running 100% carbon-free power. And so how can we strive toward that as a first goal and be able to maintain the value proposition? Because I did look at some charts in which there is a very high percentage, not quite a majority, but a high percentage of what is called unspecified power. And that's the thing about unspecified power, is that we just don't know. And so assumptions are made as to its emissions content. So I'm hoping that in that unspecified power that we're getting some large hydroelectric, or maybe some small hydroelectric. Hopefully, I know we're not getting any nuclear, but I want us to work with all of our products to get a greater level of specificity. I am back home now, and I am running on 100% solar on an annualized basis, including doing my Zoom. So I believe in the work of EBCE in renewables and storage. Hundreds of millions of kilowatt hours are being curtailed on the California grid. How can we invest to be able to capture that energy and put it to use? Because renewables should not go to waste. And I believe that we are one of the great organizations that can capture that for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Adrian, do we know who the next person is for public comment?
My apologies, I was muted. Jessica Tovar. I am unmuting Jessica Tovar now.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar with the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and forgive me, I do have a dog that's trying to jump on my lap and barking at me. So I did hear somebody mention that bill that was defeated last year was AB 1139 against local solar incentives, but we are dealing currently with that through the CPUC. So just to add that. I wanted to kind of just remind folks, based on the conversation at the last board meeting, that the nuclear energy offer from PG&E was majority rejected by community choice programs in the state of California. I believe that there was only 3 programs that accepted the nuclear, and there was, I think 2 of those programs intended to try to sell it. One had indicated that it was not sellable, that there was hardly any market in the state of California for nuclear energy. And then there was a community choice program that reversed its decision out in Central Coast to not accept the nuclear offer from PG&E. So they reversed the decision to not take it. So I wanted to highlight those things because that keeps coming up in conversation. And we shouldn't be taking anything from PG&E. We should be doing better than PG&E is doing in terms of power content, which is why we advocated for the local development business plan to do more programs and projects that actually create jobs and clean energy infrastructure and other projects that help us reduce our consumption, save on our bills, et cetera, et cetera. So really what that is transitioning into a clean energy economy at home and relying a lot less on remote sources of energy. And so that brings me to another point, is that I know that the local development business plan does a lot of good work to try to find outside sources of funding to fund local development. And one of the things that has come our way is we see a good opportunity for a huge amount of money that is way out of a small organization like Local Clean Energy Alliance's wheelhouse, or even other nonprofits within the East Bay. And so we're really hoping that EBCE could help us in applying for these large amounts of funding that could fund microgrids and resilience hubs that our local nonprofit allies have been advocating for, as well as other projects like, we know that you're doing the low to moderate income electrification. It'd be great to pair that and do full decarbonization with production of solar and battery storage. So I plan to follow up with this idea via email to both the Community Advisory Committee as well as the board. So I just wanted to share that with you, and clean power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one more speaker, Audrey Ichinose. Audrey, I am unmuting you now. Audrey, you are unmuted.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Adrian, this is Cynthia. I've been trying to get into the main room. I've been here since 6:07.
Yes, I've noted that. I resent you the presenter link. If you could please try to rejoin from the presenter link.
At which link now?
There's a presenter link I sent to your email. But otherwise, I will keep you unmuted and available to speak in the main meeting as an attendee that's been promoted.
Okay.
Okay. Otherwise, Audrey Ichinose, you have your hand raised.
Yes.
And I've unmuted you.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is Audrey Ichinose, East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and the statewide California Alliance for Community Energy. I had sent a written comment into the subcommittee meeting on Friday, but I didn't realize it had been canceled. So thank you, Adrian, for sending this message to the Board of Directors and the Community Advisory Committee, as well as Melissa Brandt. By the way, it's very good to have you back. So I wonder if I may just read my message. It concerns something, a very fundamental change, I think, in the way we are going to, we as, an load serving entity, and also as taxpayers, going to experience a very significant shift in the way public purpose programs will be financed. And it has to do with a workshop that the CPUC conducted several weeks ago. And at this workshop, Melissa Brandt is quoted in the San Diego Union Tribune as speaking in favor of shifting the cost for these programs from ratepayers, us, to the state taxpayers. And that seems to be very significant. Those programs include energy efficiency programs, as well as care FERA plans. So since such a shift seems very significant, I wonder if the staff can clarify the following. One, what are the pluses and minuses for EBCE from such a shift? What were the reasons behind EBCE's favoring this shift? I know there are many sort of budget consequences, including customer energy bills. And secondly, would the shift have any negative impact on our care FERA customers? And as I understand, they represent 10% of EBCE's accounts. Now, if this change is adopted, I hope that it will not lead to a loosening of EBCE's commitment to promoting social equity in its service territory. And I'm reading from my message, I further hope that this issue receives full discussion by EBCE's board and by the Community Advisory Committee. Thanks very much. And Adrian has sent you all this same message. Thanks very much.
Thank you. There are no further, hold on one second. And there are no further speakers.
All right, thank you so much, Adrian. With that, we can close item 2. And I just want to say thank you to all of our public commenters this evening. We can go then to item 3, approval of minutes. I know that we have 5 minutes that we have to approve tonight. So why don't we go ahead and begin with, I want to just see like if we're able to take them all up at once. So with that, I just want to ask if folks have anything that they want to clarify from the minutes. Yes, Member Sutter.
Yep. So there's 2 things that I think need to be clarified on this raft, and it has to do with the January and the February minutes. In the January minutes, we have this recommendation section that it needs to have some sort of clarification. It could be like, because it's confusing. They were measures, or they were items that were of information for us. We didn't take any action on them one way or the other. It was the recommendation that was going to the board, not the recommendation that the CAC was supporting or not. And there was no motion or anything. So I think that there has to be some sort of clarification in both January and February when we have that. The other thing is in the February item C4, it talks about the board discussed, and that should be the commission, or the CAC discussed, because we're not a board, we're a committee. So those were my 2 small things that I think need to be updated.
All right, thank you so much, Member Sutter. Any other changes for the minutes?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, I don't know if I'm a panelist or, can you hear me, William?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I just want to highlight that in the minutes, because I know that I had asked for it to be agendized. So Tom Kelly's request regarding Bright Choice, it is in the minutes to be agendized. So I just want to point that out. So yes, which would have been for this meeting.
Okay.
It's on the, yeah, his item that he's asking about the power content of the Bright Choice emissions. That was supposed to have been agendized for tonight. I was not aware of the request for the PCIA charge, lowering of the PCIA charge, but I just want to point that out, that was agendized for tonight. And the spelling of my name is Landry, Landry. I know people want to call me Laundry, which is okay, but it's Landry. And the other thing that I had asked to be agendized for tonight meeting was the issue of the stipend, and that is also there. I don't know if it's on tonight's agenda or not. I don't think so.
So I don't see it on tonight's agenda, and I do want to apologize, Member Landry, for those omissions. And so I'll coordinate with Chair Eldred for the next agenda to make sure that any agenda or any items that bring up, we'll make sure to bring that up with staff that we want items brought up on the agenda.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Any other? Yes.
But wasn't Tom Kelly's item agendized last time and addressed by staff? And I think the point he's bringing up is that it wasn't satisfactorily addressed, which I think is a valid point. And so I think, you know, I think the request that I'm hearing from Mr. Kelly is that he would like an opportunity to speak to this board and, you know, clarify the issue for us. And then I think it would be appropriate to have another response from staff once that's, you know, once we get a little deeper into it.
Thank you, Member Frank, for that. I was going to ask, I think maybe to bring any of these like opportunities for the public, or as per Mr. Kelly's request to speak to us. I was going to ask that during item 6, if that's an option that can come up, or an opportunity that I don't believe in my term on this commission that we've seen a member of the public speak or give a presentation, at least not have to my knowledge or memory. But I did want to ask that during item 6 so that we can get through most of the agenda before that. So thank you for that. Any other corrections for the agendas or for the minutes? Apologies.
Yeah, this is Jim Lutz. I wasn't a member prior to December, so I probably shouldn't be voting on the minutes, approving the minutes.
Well, if you came in December, I think we'll have to split the minutes up. So we'll approve the first October through December minutes as written, and then we'll approve the January and February as amended. Once folks make a motion. Yes, Member Sutter.
So I put forward a motion that we approve the October to December minutes as stated and the January and February minutes as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you so much. Adrian, let's go ahead and do the roll. So there are 2 motions. One is for the October through December minutes, and the second motion is for January and February.
Great. For the October through December minutes, as stated, Member Landry?
Yes.
Member Frank?
Yes.
Member Lou?
Yes.
Member Swaminathan?
Yes.
Member Lakshman?
Yes.
Member Tauria? Member Pacheco?
Abstain.
Member Sutter?
I abstain for October and approve November and December. I was not here in October.
Okay. Member Hernandez? Jim Lutz, Member Lutz abstains. Chair Mutzenberg?
Yes.
And Member Eldridge is not here. Great. The measure passes. Okay, so for the January and February as amended, Member Landry?
Yes.
Member Frank?
Yes.
Member Lou?
Yes.
Member Swaminathan?
Yes, for January, I was absent February.
So would you prefer to abstain for the January?
Abstain for February.
Abstain for February. And for January?
Yeah, vote yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Member Lakshman?
Okay, yes, for January, abstain for February.
Okay. Member Tauria? Member Pacheco?
Abstain.
Abstain for both January and February?
Yes.
Okay. Member Sutter?
Yes.
Member Hernandez? Member Lutz?
Yes. As amended.
Yes, as amended. Member Eldridge is not here. And Chair Mutzenberg?
Yes.
Yes, the measure passes.
All right, thank you so much. So now we'll move on to the chair report. I have not received anything from Chair Eldred to report for this meeting. So that concludes my report. With that, we can then, if there's no question, or do we need to do public comment for the chair report, Adrian?
We do have a comment for a speaker for this item.
Okay.
If you would like to go ahead and recognize Blair Beacon.
Then let's go ahead and since that concludes my chair report, we'll open it up to public comment. So go ahead and allow Ms. Beekman, or Mr. Beekman to hop on.
Thank you. Mr. Beekman, you are unmuted for 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for allowing me public comment at this time. I wanted to first, I wanted to clarify something. I wanted to ask a procedural question. First, a thank you that Adrian is back and that he's back at his job doing his work again. I haven't been around for a while and he was sick the fall of last year, so it's nice to see him back. Thank you. I wanted to quickly offer that a clarification that I mentioned the IPR reports in my public comment were from October 2020. And that since then, the EBCE has worked on those initial statistics of that time, and I think had an important impact on how the AB 1139 went forward and basically stopped. I think it was the efforts of the EBCE who were working on their IPR statistics from October 2020 and did some really good, important work. So thank you for that, just to clarify. And to ask the procedural question, it was my understanding, I've learned, you know, for doing this for a few years now, that you know, to limit public comment at the time of meeting minutes approval, and it has to be directed towards the items of the minutes itself, basically. So I've really learned to I don't speak at the minute times that much anymore, but I feel there should have been a procedural matter that allowed at least the option for public comment time to happen, and that wasn't asked or allowed for, and I thought I would mention it this time just for a future reference and what to do with this matter. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That procedure is noted, and I apologize for skipping over that. So are we able to do public comment for, or offer up public comment for the approval of the minutes to go back and open that up, or no? Just want to make sure.
We've already taken the vote about
okay.
it. So I would say no at this time.
Okay, then I'll just make a note of that for the future, in case, for when I have to come into chair. So thank you for public comment. Any other public comments?
There are no further public comment at this time.
All right, thank you so much, Adrian. I think since I don't really have a report, we don't have to approve of it. So if there's no issues with procedure, I think we can close out. All right, so then we'll close out item 4 and we can move to item 5, the local development update. This is an informational item, so we do not need to take any action, but depending on discussions this evening, we'll see if we need to, if we would like as a body to make any recommendations. So with that, I'll pass it over to the EBCE staff to give the presentation.
All right, thank you very much. I'm JP Ross. I work on the local development team, manage the team, and am happy to give a presentation to you all tonight about our programs. As a matter of admin, Adrian, are you going to be progressing the slides for us tonight?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's go to the first slide. So this is an update to you all that we'll be making to the board on Wednesday as a generalized update of our programs. It is not all inclusive of all of the programs we are running, but a bit of a hit list on the major activities that we are undergoing. One thing I would note is that we have brought on a new staff member, Feliz, who will be talking about our resilience work. So Felice Ventura, who just showed herself on screen, thank you, Felice, is going to be taking on the resilience work from Jesse Denver. So Jesse and Zach have been working a lot on our resilience work over the last 3 years to get us to where we are today. The Jesse and Zach are going to be focused from here on our transportation electrification work, along with Vanessa, who recently joined the team. And Felice will be taking on our resilience work. So really excited to have Felice taking on that work. She is an EBCE customer, lives in Oakland, and it's great to be building the team and also be able to give our team members kind of more ownership and capacity to focus on their work. So again, Felice will be on resilience, Jesse and Zach and Vanessa will be completely focused on transportation electrification. And we'll be doing a bit of a tag team tonight. So I'll be talking about a few things that we're doing at an overall team level. I'll also be talking about our connected communities work for Samantha, who is otherwise occupied tonight. And then everyone else, the other program managers on the team will be taking on and covering their areas of work. So we're happy to be talking about the things that we're really focused on this year and talking with you all about how we are doing that in the run up to our budgeting activity coming up over the next quarter as we approach the end of the year. So that's a bit of a long-winded background. Thank you for bearing with me. So a few things that we're really working on this year is kind of innovating. One of the things is innovating on our delivery model. So we're running our programmatic suite of work that we'll be talking through. And then we're also really thinking about different ways that we can deliver value to our cities and communities in a broader sense and how we can scale those efforts. So as you all are aware, we're the procurement agency for energy, for electricity, for all of our customers. And we're really thinking about how can we continue to do that and lead as a procurement agent for our cities as they're striving to achieve their climate action plans. And if you read our city's climate action plans, EBCE is a key partner in a lot of those climate action plans across a broad suite of areas. And we really see ourselves as a catalyst for our cities to achieve those climate action plans. So some of the ways that we're doing that are through our solar and storage program, our municipal critical facilities program, which is going to build resiliency for our communities through our city facilities. And EBCE is going to be the central procurement agent for our cities as we accelerate to delivering resilience to our communities through our cities. We're also using and looking at how we can deploy fast charging available to all of our customers, not just homeowners, but residents of multifamily housing, as well as city fleets, again, as a procurement agent. So how can EBCE step in and do the things that our cities want to do for their communities? And hopefully, our goal is to do it faster and better as that procurement agent, delivering renewable 100% carbon-free electricity to drive these broader decarbonization efforts across buildings and transportation. So that's one area that we're really focused on delivering, and you'll hear from the team about our steps and activities this year to deliver that. The second is, how do we bring in low-cost capital and use EBCE's balance sheet and capital access, again, to deliver on some of these programs. So an example of that is our block power, low to moderate income, energy efficiency, and building electrification program, where EBCE is providing some low-cost debt that's bringing in other capital to the equation to provide services to our low to moderate income customers. And then lastly is, how can we, again, bring in other sources of capital like state-funded programs to reduce debt for our most vulnerable customers. So delivering on the arrearage management plan, delivering $8 million in debt relief, and doing our community solar discount and solar discount programs. Like all of these are ways that we're thinking about and actually now actioning delivery of these services to our communities and cities. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question here, or do you want me to wait to the end?
We've got a lot of material here, Cynthia, so I think it'd be helpful if we kind of wait to the end.
Okay.
Thanks. So I think as Jessica had talked about earlier, something that we're really working on and pretty happy with, but never satisfied, is the amount of other sources of capital that we're bringing into the community and the county through our efforts. Unfortunately, my summation row didn't make it in here, but this is an example. This is not all inclusive, but this is a list of some of the programs that we have been working on that are now not, bringing in EBCE's Local Development Business Plan Fund and the dollars that our team works on, and how we can actually now see other sources of capital coming into the community based on the work that we're doing. So the top line there, I'll just run through a couple of these to explain how this table works. The top line there is our California Electric Vehicle Incentive Program that we've been working on for a few years now. That was deployed this year, and EBCE committed $3.5 million to that incentive program. And what that brought in was about $14.5 million of funding from the state, from the California Energy Commission. And by putting those incentives into Alameda County, that's also going to bring private capital, private developers who are bringing in their dollars to build electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the county. So our $3.5 million is actually leveraging way more money that's coming into the community, creating jobs and creating investment. And you can see here really through a lot of the programs that we're working on, there's a mix. There's EBCE bringing some dollars, the public funding, and in some cases we get all three, where private capital is also coming into play. We recently filed our energy efficiency elect to administer advice letter, and that's going to bring in $13.5 million of energy efficiency funding into the community that we're going to be able to target for programs that we want to deliver. And when we are running these programs and bringing this capital into the community, it also gives us some control over the types of jobs that are created. So we always want to be creating high road jobs. So the programs that we're running are requiring prevailing wage and other high road job requirements for the labor that this type of work creates. Next slide, please. So we've been spending quite a bit of time building out our CRM. We call it the eCRM, short for EBCE CRM. This is in Salesforce. And so now we're able to provide customer level tracking on programmatic participation. So this has really taken off over the last 3 to 6 months, whereby we are able to track customer enrollments, customer expressions of interest, kind of on the front end on our website, our Municipal Electrification Assistance Program, our medical baseline battery program. These applicants who are our customers are coming through the front end of the funnel. We're able to track that back to an individual and an account in our system, and then able to actually track the status of an enrollment or a program activity or an incentive within Salesforce. So this gives us customer level information about the activity rates in our programs, and also who is participating in our programs. So we know if the customers participating are on care, or in which zip codes they live in, if those are disadvantaged communities or low income communities, and provides us a lot better access and understanding of who the programs that we are operating and the values that those programs and who those value and benefits are accruing to. And we're now in the process of really building that out. So our new programs are really all focused on having a Salesforce intake process and building a workflow and a customer journey that sits within Salesforce so that we really know who our programs are reaching within our territory. So it's a pretty exciting build out, still some work to do, and there's some legacy programs that we want to bring back into Salesforce. But this is really going to help us understand and manage, to our next slide, about kind of the equity value of who our programs are reaching. And then lastly, we also are starting to build out some automated marketing capabilities through a tool called Pardot. And that allows for some automated marketing so that we can really increase the value of our marketing and our understanding of who our customers are, so that as we roll out new programs, we can really kind of bring customers to a partner and increase the value of the programs that we're running. And then, yeah, so it's pretty exciting and been a lot of work kind of getting this up and running. And there's still more work to do. But the ability for us to track our activities in Salesforce is a big step. Next slide, please. So the equity element is something that we are really working on and have been building over time. So we want to continue to build out an equitable program portfolio. It's really a thread that runs through all of our programs. So we have programs areas like connected communities, which are really focused entirely on our care customers, our disadvantaged communities, our most vulnerable customers who may not be able to be making payments on their bills. And that's like a program category. But really, the equity elements of our programs is a consistent thread really running through all of our areas. So when you look at our energy efficiency work, we made sure to have a low income energy efficiency pilot that was specifically targeted to care customers. And then in building electrification, we recently launched our low moderate income electrification and energy efficiency program with Block Power that's exclusively focused on low to moderate income customers. And in our transportation electrification space, it's really kind of consistently across all of the different efforts that we have in TE, an area of focus. So we were actually able to change how the state is delivering funds through the Cal EVIP program, not only for the Alameda County program, but for all programs going forward, to make sure that there was a better allocation of funding for multifamily affordable housing. So that's an example of how the work that we're doing on equity is actually having a much broader effect across the state. And then we also have our multifamily affordable housing prioritization within Resilient Home that is providing solar and storage to multifamily affordable housing residents, as well as the single family residents in our territory. And then our medical baseline battery backup program, again, really focusing on priority communities. So across all of the different program areas, we're always thinking about how can we make sure that even if the full category is not focused on low, moderate income and frontline communities, but there's always an element of equity that we're bringing in across our program. And then, the work that I just spoke to recently on Salesforce also helps to understand what's the baseline participation rates across our programs for frontline communities. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk very briefly about Sam's area of focus before I pass it on to Becky. So our Connected Communities program really started in 2019 when we identified that some of the highest disconnection rates in California were in EBCE's territory. So we had multiple zip codes, 11, where more than 10% of the accounts had been disconnected or had suffered from a disconnection, which is much higher than the PG&E average. So this is something we started pre-COVID, pre the major debt crisis that has afflicted our frontline communities, and started building a capability for providing some benefits to those communities. Next slide, please. So the Connected Communities program is really focused on how we can deliver some relief to these communities. So we're now working with community-based organizations to deliver some of the state programs that we're now participating in. So we have the Disadvantaged Communities Green Tariff, the DAC Green Tariff, and Community Solar Green Tariff program. That's going to be delivering a 20% rate discount to about 2,100 customers who live in DACs in our territory. And we're now actually delivering that discount to the 1,600 customers that are eligible for the Disadvantaged Community Green Tariff program. And we are going to be issuing a solicitation to develop in-district solar projects so that we can deliver this discount from projects built in Alameda County. And we're also now selecting some CBO partners, some community-based organization partners to help us enroll customers in the arrearage management program, which can deliver debt relief to customers with over $500 in accrued debt that was accrued during the COVID period. So we're really excited to get going with those CBOs. We've signed one grant agreement, and we have 4 other CBOs who we've selected so that we can get out into the community through those CBOs to the people who need this assistance. And then what's not here is the CAP, it is the California Arrearage Payment Program. So that's $8 million in debt relief that's going to be delivered to customers. And then lastly, we are now going to be participating in the percentage of income payment plan, and that will be setting a bill cap for customers so that they can be paying electricity bills based on their income as opposed to the amount of electricity they use. And this is a pilot that the PUC is operating. It's on the next slide, but I think I'll move through that fairly quickly so that we make sure we've got time for everybody else and questions at the end. But that's the Connected Communities program of work. And I will now pass it on to Becky, who's going to talk about energy efficiency and building electrification.
Great. So Adrian, I think you can advance. The next slide is what JP just mentioned, so we can move to the next one. So I'm very happy to announce that EBCE has submitted our supplemental advice letter for our energy efficiency funding request. We had originally submitted an advice letter in October of last year, October of 2021, but were directed to remove a low to moderate income electrification program in order to achieve a higher TRC. A TRC is the total resource cost test and is an expression of your cost to benefit ratio. I'm happy to go offline with anyone if you want to understand the background of what happened there. But the good news is that we were able to put together a program budget of around $13 million. The program that we're implementing will be targeting the commercial sector. It's a pay for performance program. What that means is that incentives are paid on the basis of measured cost-effective savings. So there's no guesswork about what we're actually getting for the dollars we're putting down. In addition, we're really targeting the program for peak period reductions, and the incentives will be a little higher for that. Incentives for this program are also paid to the installers. This really promotes quality installation and encourages that focus on peak reduction so that they really make sure they're designing and implementing a project that is going to deliver on the program objectives. And as I mentioned, since we're really focusing on those peak reductions, we're targeting combinations of both energy efficiency and demand response implementation side by side. We can move to the next slide. This program proposal was really built on a handful of pilots that we have been running since 2020 that really just wrapped up in January. Those 3 pilots and the results of them are shared here. The first, as JP had alluded to, is a pilot program targeting our care customers. We actually have about 22% of our residential customers that are on the care rate. The program was looking at a combination of using Rising Sun's Greenhouse Call Service, which is a really great local youth development organization that also delivers energy saving kits and energy saving tips to customers. We paired that with an offering from a provider called Ohm Connect that helps customers enroll in their platform to reduce energy when called upon. And in combination of those 2 programs, some of which overlapped, we had about 388 customers who participated, which is great. And across all of those customers who participated, we saw a reduction of about 2% in their energy consumption during our measurement period. This program was also one where we measured the meter-based savings, so we feel very confident in that 2% savings figure, which is great news. In addition, we enrolled 122 projects in a single family peak management program. This one was testing whether or not we could leverage the Bayren Home Plus program and offer a price signal to get additional peak demand reductions out of the projects that were already occurring. This one we found we actually did not have a measurable impact on peak, but I don't think that that's because it's not possible. I think in this case, it was an impact of timing. We had a very short time frame initiating this pilot to enroll customers. It didn't give a lot of time to really bring contractors on board and really help contractors understand the strategies that they could use to maximize that incentive reduction savings. So not as great news on that one, but I still think there are good lessons learned there. And then finally, our commercial pay for performance program. Out of all of our funding, we reserved about $350,000 in incentives through 3 projects. So we're seeing what we might expect to see from a program like this. It's a really good program for big projects, large savings opportunities. It is fully subscribed. Because of the fact that we are measuring savings on that program based on meter-based savings, they won't actually be available for a full year after the installation of the project. So we can get a full year worth of measurements in order to inform our incentive levels. So check back for results on that program in February of 2020. Pleased with what we've seen so far for participation. Next slide, please. Another program that I'm excited to talk about is one that we rolled out about this time last year. It's the Municipal Electrification Assistance Program. This is a next generation version of our Reach Code Assistance Program. Cities are asked to apply in one of the 3 eligible categories of funding. We may open that up for an additional round of cities who have already applied based on participation, but we're trying to do some loss recruitment first. The 3 categories cities are available to apply in are Reach Code Assistance, technical assistance on a specific project or proposal, and gap funding to help cover projects. For Reach Codes, we're really pushing this year for a regional model Reach Code approach instead of individual Reach Codes city by city. This really supports our contractor and developer community when they don't have to learn a new Reach Code. Albany to El Cerrito, for example, can be more consistent across a broader geographic region. We're also willing to support cities who have already adopted Reach Codes, but need support in implementation. So that's another eligible category under the MEA program. Technical assistance can support specific project evaluations. I have a great example here from the city of Hayward, who was interested in electrifying a boiler that they had on premises, but it was a complicated project. The boiler was providing both heating for the building as well as hot water use. And so they needed some support. We brought in an external vendor who was able to meet with their team and advise them on their options. Hopefully they're able to move forward with that project, which is great. And then for gap funding, it's up to $10,000. This is great, for example, if a city wants to pursue funding under the on-bill financing program that's offered by the utilities. That program restricts the overall loan amount based on a payback period, which sometimes leaves cities with a gap that they can't finance. So this funding can hopefully cover that cost. Another example, we're going to be supporting the city of Berkeley with the installation of a handful of heat pump water heater projects. They are able to get quite a bit of funding through a utility program, but not fully. And so our funding is helping them to install not just one project, but multiple. So that's exciting news there as well. You can go to the next page, next slide. So one project that we've been working very, very hard on that we're very excited about is an Induction Cooktop lending program. For this program, we're partnering with an organization called Actera. They're a nonprofit based in the peninsula, and they've been running a program like this in their service area, and are very excited to take on the East Bay program as well. We have a soft launch of this program in April and a public launch in early May. We're targeting somewhere between 200 to 250 loans in year one of the program. Another early success story of this program is that we really worked hard with Actera to source the supply materials for this kit, including the Induction hobs, from a local supplier. So we are paying a premium for that, but we're happy to do so to make sure that those dollars are spent on local businesses. The other benefit about this is it helps to start signaling to our businesses locally that Induction is a thing that people are interested in, and that it'd be good for them to start stocking if they hadn't already. Another nice thing about this program is that we're really going to be working to have an outsized impact. So of those 200 or 250 loans, we'll also be conducting cooking demonstrations and classes, and really trying to leverage the marketing and outreach on that, which I actually speak about on the next slide. I just had to double check. So we can go to the next slide and I'll talk more about that. We've really discovered that the Induction related marketing and outreach has a draw. Cooking and food is not only very personal and very connecting for many individuals, but I would say even more so here in the Bay Area, birth of the slow food movement. People take their food and their cooking very seriously here, and health is a big part of that. So we've been really excited with the reception we've received. I think many of you have hopefully seen the 3 videos that we had made starting in 2019 that were really focusing on well-known commercial chefs trying Induction. In one case, it was a local chef who actually already cooks on Induction. We've received more than 40,000 views on those videos just on EBCE's channels. This is not even the views that we received in partnership with Sunset Magazine. So we think that there's something there, and we're excited about leveraging that as a way to not only boost our brand awareness and engage with our customers, but also really help demystify the idea that Induction cooking is not a luxury thing. We really want to make sure people understand what they can do with it. So we'll be doing social media campaigns along with the Induction lending program, as I mentioned, cooking classes and demonstrations, and possibly even a social media competition, all to really draw folks in and around this topic of Induction, cooking and food. So you should hopefully see a lot of that. I know you are all following EBCE on social media, so I don't have to ask you to do it. Next slide, please. One project that we're super excited about as well is a grant that we're working on from the California Energy Commission. We are a sub on this grant to E3, Energy and Environmental Economics is the prime. We're working alongside GridWorks as well. And the idea of this pilot is to test whether or not we can be strategic about the decommissioning of natural gas infrastructure. We all know that in our end game, we would like to be fully decarbonized. But in order to get there, we have to deal with a number of consumer-based issues, whether they want to have fully electric buildings, what kind of programs are going to be most effective in getting them there. And key to this project, whether or not early decommissioning of some of those natural gas assets can actually unlock financial savings, for example, from avoided improvements of natural gas infrastructure that can be used to help facilitate that decarbonization effort on the building side as well. So the project itself is going to be developing an evaluative criteria for choosing locations that seem to present benefits for early gas decommissioning. We'll be developing a deployment plan to test and testing the hypothesis that we chose good locations, that the criteria worked, and that there will be benefits to the system as a whole based on these early decommissioning activities. Next slide, please. Our role at EBCE in this is twofold. First of all, we're informing the human perspective of the evaluative criteria. How do people feel about electrification? What is their propensity to electrify? Some communities may need more funding. Some communities may be willing to co-pay. Basically gathering the information that we can through community outreach, one-on-one interviews, town hall meetings, whatever strategies we can to inform both the evaluation criteria as well as the deployment plan. So our next role in this project is to actually develop those deployment plans. What that means is, what is it going to take to achieve zonal electrification, full gas decommissioning within these pilot areas? Pilots are looking at about a 25 building size, so not huge, but large enough that we think they could be challenging. We're looking for a rural suburban pilot, an urban pilot, and a pilot in a disadvantaged community. And I want to make sure I underscore this last point. At this point, there is no funding to actually complete the identified pilots. We are all very hopeful that there will be a next round of funding from the California Energy Commission that we can then apply to actually implement on those deployment plans that we developed. That is my last slide. I believe I'm turning it over to Jesse. Oh no, probably Felice. And Felice, we can't see you again, unfortunately, but I know you're there.
It says I'm sharing, but apologies, everybody. I'll stop and see if I can start it again. Okay, I think I'm there.
Yep.
Next slide, please. All right. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Becky. Thank you for the kind welcome. I'm Felice Ventura, and I'm so pleased to be here tonight to talk with you. I'll talk with you about resilient home and then critical municipal facilities, and then I'll pass it over to Jesse. So Resilient Home is a program designed to provide solar and battery storage to residential customers for both emergency and daily use, while also delivering load reduction by discharging these batteries during the evening peak time. This program is a partnership with Sunrun, and it's aiming to deliver about 2,000 solar and battery installations at both single and multifamily residential sites. That would yield about 5 megawatts of total load reduction by 2023. So since the launch of this program in August of 2020, highlights include about 1,000 customer sales agreements have been signed, which equates to about 6 megawatts of solar PV and 2.2 megawatts of load reduction. So we'll continue to build on this performance with additional sales through 2023. So the program will continue to march on through that time. So it's a wonderful program, and really echoing back to that concept that JP was talking about in the very beginning about having that thread running through all of our programs to reach all of our disadvantaged and frontline communities. Next slide, please. All right, critical municipal facility resilience. This is a program that is designed to procure solar and battery storage on behalf of our city and county partners to provide backup power to critical facilities. So an example of a critical facility would be something like a fire station. So essentially, it's designed to utilize EBCE as a centralized procurement pathway and leverage our solar industry experience to minimize costs as well as maximize deployment of solar and storage for our city and county partner. This program started out in 2019 with a high-level feasibility of over 300 critical facilities across the county to begin a prioritization process. After this work was done, an RFI was issued to the solar industry to get feedback on what would need to be done to ensure that enough information was included in an RFP for a cost-effective result. Based on the responses to this RFI, actually 2 engineering consultants were engaged in 2021 to develop some additional information on those sites to refine that information. At the same time, the city councils in the 4 phase 1 cities also passed resolutions committing to proceed with our procurement process as that engineering assessment process went on as well. At this point, we're really excited to be looking forward to our next major step in delivering on phase 1 of the program, which would be an RFP for a PPA vendor in mid-2022. After that, we'll also begin to develop the next phase of assessments that will lead to phase 2 procurement with a new set of cities. And that set of cities is TBD going forward. So I think we can move to the next slide. And I will hand it off to Jesse.
Great. Thanks so much, Felice. So as JP had noted, Felice is taking on the resilience work that Zach and I have been leading along with the transportation electrification program. So we can really have some focus from the team on these important programmatic areas. I'm going to cover this program because it will stay under my umbrella until we are fully subscribed with the funding that we have on this particular resilience program. So we launched a medical baseline battery backup pilot program last fall, in an effort to help improve the resilience of our most vulnerable customers, who are medical baseline and low income customers. And we did a pretty major review of the zip codes that had the highest incidences of durable electricity dependent medical devices throughout the county. And this was information that was provided to us by Alameda County Public Health. And we procured Goal Zero Yeti 3000X batteries, 50 of them, and then conducted outreach to these zip codes where the customers who received the outreach messaging were either CARE or FARA customers and are enrolled in the medical baseline program. Once we touched those customers, those target customers, a number of times with outreach, based on response, we then expanded our lens of outreach to other low-income medical baseline customers throughout our service territory. And we ended up fully subscribing the batteries, and battery recipients were really distributed throughout our service territory, which was great to see. In addition, and in parallel, we also launched a rebate program for any medical baseline customer throughout our service territory to take advantage of for the procurement of the same battery type. And so this rebate is still available. We have paid out about 30 or so rebates to date to really customers everywhere throughout our service territory who have bought the battery. Our incentive can be stacked with an incentive that PG&E has on the same battery, which is an additional $1,000. And that is specific to customers who are in high fire threat district 2 or 3. That's for PG&E's side of the rebate. Our rebate is available to any medical baseline customer throughout our service territory, irregardless of whether they're in a high fire threat district or not. Our marketing and outreach team has connected with some of the free battery recipients and some of the rebate recipients, and is putting together an informational video, much like the induction cooking videos that Becky talked about. So that will be a really great piece of collateral to highlight the success of this program in enhancing resilience for our most vulnerable customers. Next slide, please. On transportation electrification, the team has done quite a bit of work over the last couple of years to really understand where to focus our efforts. And we have some very clear strategic priorities as an organization, and those include providing incentives for publicly available charging infrastructure, both level 2 charging infrastructure and DC fast charging infrastructure. This is all charging infrastructure that must be shared and publicly accessible. So this is not charging infrastructure for single family homes or for a single car that has a dedicated parking spot and only that car would have access to that charger. The other area of focus that we have, and I'll go into detail in each of these priority areas, is on EBCE deploying a network of fast charging hubs that we actually will own and operate. The third area is in helping our Joint Power Authority member communities with their own municipal fleets and helping them lead by example in the community and transitioning those municipal fleet vehicles to zero emission vehicles by 2030. And then the fourth kind of area that we're focused on is really establishing our service territory as a first mover market for zero emission, medium, and heavy duty goods movement. So starting at the top with kind of light duty vehicles and why we're focused on these strategic priority areas, the team, we analyzed data associated with our residents. And, you know, as everyone knows, 47% of the population in our service territory are renters. And we also evaluated the multifamily building stock in our service territory with 5 or more units, and found that all of these buildings that are multifamily housing buildings are, not all of them, sorry, 90%, a little over 90% of them are 50 years old or older. And what that means is that we are not getting charging infrastructure into multifamily housing anytime soon because of the vintage of these buildings. These buildings will need extensive electrical capacity upgrades, in addition to the other barriers associated with installing charging infrastructure at multifamily housing, including who pays for it, the deeded versus not deeded parking spaces, and a whole other suite of issues. And we have DMV registration data that's incorporated into our customer database. And we can see that to date, there has been virtually no adoption of electric vehicles by renters. So this is a really big gap if we're going to help the state achieve its zero emission vehicle goals, which have interim goals in 2025 and 2030. And so what we did was we mapped all the multifamily housing in our service territory, and that's what you see here on the map with the red squares. And we created multifamily housing hotspots. So each one of these red squares is a square mile, and the darker the color red is the higher density number of multifamily housing units within that square mile. And then we overlaid that with where there is available fast charging infrastructure. And the larger the blue dot means there's, you know, a greater number of DC fast charging stations at that particular location. And as you can see, there are multiple square miles of area where thousands of renters have zero access to public charging infrastructure. And so this is really our priority, is ensuring that we get fast charging into these multifamily hotspots. And what that means is that the charging infrastructure is not actually located at a multifamily housing property, but nearby, so that it's conveniently accessible to renters. They can charge within 30 to 40 minutes or less, and that the charging infrastructure itself is also adjacent to driver amenities that they can take advantage of while they wait for their vehicle to charge. So I'm going to get into this in a bit more detail in a few minutes. Next slide, please. So as JP mentioned, we were able to leverage funding from the California Energy Commission. The California Energy Commission brought $14.5 million to Alameda County for our Alameda County Incentive Project. And EBCE's board approved a budget of $14.5 million over 4 years for EV charging infrastructure. And we allocated $3 million of that budget to incentives for the Cal EVIP program, or the Alameda County Incentive Program. And our funding is going to level 2 chargers. And then the remainder of that budget, I'll talk about that on the next slide, is dedicated to EBCE's fast charging infrastructure and that network of fast charging hubs that we'll actually own. So as JP mentioned, equity is a single thread that runs through all of our decision making, and this is especially true in developing the incentive project with the California Energy Commission. In total, the budget for EV charging infrastructure incentives was $17.3 million, and 50% of that total budget had to be for projects that are in DAC and low-income communities. And these are per the definition of Cal EnviroScreen and AB 1550 low-income census tracts. Of that $17.3 million budget, $8.5 million was dedicated to DC fast charging infrastructure incentives. All of that money is California Energy Commission money. And we were able to carve out a programmatic requirement that 50% of that budget had to go to DC fast charging projects that were located in EBCE's multifamily hotspots, so that we can really ensure that we're filling those important gaps. And then the big thing that was really, very cool outcome of all of our team's hard work and data analysis was that we said to the Energy Commission, hey, in past incentive programs that you've implemented throughout the state, you have this incentive adder for multifamily housing that is in DAC or low-income geographic boundaries. But we have all these affordable multifamily housing providers that manage portfolios of buildings with lots of communities that are actually outside of these geographic boundaries, which means in and of itself, your rules are inequitable because the same low-income residents that live in a property, say out in the Tri-Valley area or in Fremont, they will not have access to charging infrastructure because the multifamily housing property manager, developer, nonprofit organization will not be able to access this incentive adder. They will prioritize putting charging infrastructure into one of their properties that's actually in a DAC or low-income census tract. And so we pointed out to them, look at all these affordable multifamily housing properties, which are the green dots or triangles that you see on this map here, that are actually outside of the disadvantaged and low-income geographic boundaries. And that's the blue areas that you see there. So essentially the Tri-Valley and kind of southern portion of our service territory would be completely excluded from these incentive adders. So that really opened their eyes and they said, yes, any affordable multifamily housing property will be eligible for this incentive adder, and moving forward through all state programs, they are going to implement that as well. We also provided free technical assistance to multifamily affordable housing providers at 53 or 54 different properties, which resulted in a number of successful incentive applications. We launched the program on December 1st, and within 4 minutes, our DC fast charging budget was completely oversubscribed by almost $30 million. And we still have about $3 million in level 2 incentives left. Next slide, please. So as I noted, EBCE, we are prioritizing development of a network of DC fast charging hubs that we will own and operate. Based on the CEC's EVI Pro modeling tool, we need a lot of fast charging ports in our service territory. And what that equates to for EBCE is deploying somewhere between 40 and 50 of these hubs by 2030. And we have a standard design for this. Each hub will have a minimum of 10 dual port fast chargers. And what that means is that each then hub will have about 20 parking spaces that are dedicated specifically for the use case of EV charging. And what's really unique about the approach that we're taking is that we are actually working with our Joint Power Authority member communities who are providing EBCE with real estate at their municipal parking lots and parking garages, and will serve as site host to EBCE's assets. These facilities are located in our multifamily housing hotspots and are also adjacent to walkable amenities that drivers would need while they're charging. To date, we've really relied on our board approved budgets and external grants. And moving forward, we're going to try to work with our cities to establish a public-public partnership with a revenue model where we actually share the revenue with our cities and provide discounted charging to customers. And we have some phase 1 projects underway in Oakland, Livermore, and Piedmont, and phase 2 projects in the works as well. Next slide. As I mentioned, we're really trying to help our cities lead by example, and have been offering technical assistance to help them with municipal fleet electrification. We have a consultant team that is supporting this work. And as you can see here, all of our members, all of our Joint Power Authority members are engaged and have either completed fleet electrification assessments. Their assessments are in the works or upcoming. And what's really exciting about this is that we are offering a charging as a service product, so that we will assume the upfront cost of deploying charging infrastructure, will maintain that charging infrastructure. And this will really help cities be able to focus their available budgets on the procurement of the vehicles. Next slide. Our focus on the medium and heavy duty sector is really on goods movement. By all accounts, our service territory is one of the most strategic trade locations in the United States. We have a lot of work happening in this space. So I'm actually going to suggest that if there's more interest in this specifically, that we come back and give a presentation specifically on what we're up to in medium and heavy duty goods movement, because we have a lot going on.
All right. Thank you, Jesse, very much for that. And I think that concludes the presentation for this evening, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you so much for the presentation. I believe we'll go to public comment unless members have any technical questions. Adrian, is that right?
Yes, we have one speaker, Jessica Dovar. I can recognize her for 3 minutes.
Perfect.
Hi, Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. Thank you to the local development business plan team for the presentation. I do have a couple questions that came from members of East Bay Clean Power Alliance. In that diagram that you spoke of earlier, JP, yeah, realizing that it didn't seem like a full a full graph, but there was a column there that shows private capital, and we were confused about like where that money, exactly where that money comes from. And then there was also, let's see, an acronym that we weren't sure what it stood for, TE. And I think it was used in reference to also multifamily maybe. we couldn't figure out what that stood for. And then there was a question about how far above the poverty line is California with considering cost of living. And then if there were any protections, let's see, for the multi-affordable housing, if there are any tenant protections. So just addressing if there's any tenant protections to prevent displacement and gentrification of renters. So those are my questions. We might have some more. We might reach out to you all to get more information to better understand some of the programs. But yeah, overall, I just want to appreciate, there's a lot of good stuff in here that is reaching the needs, specifically connected communities. And we are excited about that pilot you mentioned to address the issue of, when as more electrification, decarbonization is happening and some folks are left on a gas infrastructure, how are they protected? That's super important because we know what the utilities do. They start to cost to recover from some of the poorest people. So with that, yeah, I appreciate it. Answers to a couple of those questions. And I look forward to more dialogue and understanding more details of the program. Thank you. Clean power to the people.
I'm happy to answer a couple of those if.
I did see in the attendee list that we do have 2 more hands raised. So I'm not sure if we want to collect all the questions first and then have you all answer them, or if we want to go person by person. So
yeah, okay. Let's go through them and we'll see if there's any grouping of questions.
All right, perfect. Sounds good.
Thank you. So Alita Dupree, you are unmuted.
Thank you again to Chair. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her. There's a lot here. This is probably the most comprehensive presentation I've seen about this, and it's very important. And I think we're really covering a lot of the basis here. The Yeti program with those batteries, that's really good work. Those batteries aren't cheap. But this is about saving lives, that helping people who are dependent on electricity for medical needs. These batteries can literally save lives. And so hopefully this is the start of something bigger as we discover how these types of batteries can make homes more resilient and safe. Because really, fundamentally, when you lose electricity, even for a short time, the quality of life in your home degrades materially very, very quickly. I know what it's like, whether it be a 10-second power outage or one that lasts the better part of a day. So thank you for doing the work with the Yeti batteries. And we are dealing with some really old infrastructure. This is about trying to raise all boats, and decarbonization should not just be about those who have the most. Unfortunately, a lot of your oldest housing has that natural gas infrastructure in it, which is only becoming more problematic over time. I live in an all-electric home, and I am fortunate that I don't have to deal with the emissions. But there is a lot of work to do to be able to help people of all means, but especially the lower income means, to be able to have all electric housings, so that way when they're doing their cooking, they're not breathing all that in. And the Induction program is very good. How do we introduce our chefs and restaurant owners to induction and other forms of electricity? Is we have to ask that in a typical restaurant kitchen, what is the cigarette equivalent that people are breathing in with all these emissions while they work full shifts over gas-powered equipment. The time to change is now. So I appreciate the educational component of this. It's a big investment, but I think it is worth it in building this people's power system. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more speaker, one additional speaker, Audrey Itanose. Audrey Itanose, I'm unmuting you now.
Thank you. Wow, that is a lot of information, and it's really good, and but it's very hard to digest. And I hope this conversation continues over several sessions and with numerous bodies. I did have a couple of questions. One was one related to the EV program, charging stations. Now, is it my understanding that the goal for EVs in DACs and other low-income areas, the ownership of electric vehicles? Or is it, how do you envision that? I ask because actually we have a neighbor who is a renter, and he seems to lease short-term EVs. And, you know, that's for people who maybe have less income. Maybe that's a doable way to participate in EVs. And so maybe EBCE, if they don't, if your objective is unclear in this area, maybe you can get together with some of these leasing companies and see if some sort of charging plan can be made up, or I don't know. I'm just trying to clarify the situation with respect to ownership in DAC areas. The other thing, it actually happens, relates to community innovation grants, which I understand is no longer being funded well, if at all. And I've been long wanting to involve some Black churches in EBCE's efforts. And one church in particular has, they were very proud of it when I visited them, maybe about a year ago, half a year ago. They were very proud of their really large gas-powered burner. And this church provides hot meals, I think weekly, but it may be more often, to East Oakland homeless encampments. And it would be terrific if we could help them to get onto induction cooking. And somehow, thing is, a lot of your projects are really aimed at co-payments, co-sponsored. And these churches are not rich, and they're afraid of big debt. I'd like to, I don't know where to turn. I've been wanting to involve Black churches somehow in EBCE programs, but I don't know where to turn, frankly. And I think if you do come up with more funds for community innovation grants, that you should also help people like me who are really kind of nonplussed about where to turn. How can I get advice? And obviously, EBCE staff needs to help me. So anyway, thanks very much. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much to our public commenters. Adrian, do we have any other folks?
There are no further speakers.
All right, then let's go ahead and close public comment, and I'll open the floor up to JP to answer some of the public comments questions, or some of the public's questions, and then we'll move to questions from the members.
Great. Yeah, I will address a couple and then defer to my team who knows much more about this stuff than I do. So just on a couple of the questions to Jessica's question on what does private capital mean, that's a bit of an all-inclusive statement. So that can be, say, in Resilient Home, that is a homeowner or the operator of a multifamily development who is investing in a solar and storage system for their property. So that's one source of private capital. In another example, the Cal EVIP program, that is private developers of publicly available DC fast chargers may be applying for funds. They're getting an incentive. They're putting in private capital, which could come from whomever's going to own those assets. And so that private capital could be a homeowner, could be a multifamily housing operator, could be another developer in the energy efficiency space. That would likely be the building operator who would be bringing in their own capital, with the assumption that the investment they're going to be making is less than the energy savings that will be accruing to them over time. So that private capital is pretty all inclusive of everything that's not EBCE funds or state funding dollars, which is necessary to kind of invest in those assets. So that's one. Jesse addressed the TE. TE means transportation electrification. Becky, I think, will answer the federal poverty question. Very quickly on the tenant protections that Jessica raised. One of the reasons on the multifamily, on the transportation electrification front that we're investing in publicly available charging for electric vehicles is that actually means that we're not putting these investments in housing units. We're instead making electric vehicle charging available to everybody. And so it somewhat circumvents the question of, are you making an investment in a particular housing unit or for a particular person that could then allow the landlord to raise the rent. We're basically, that's one way we're doing it. I think Becky can address in our low moderate income program with Block Power how we are addressing that. Audrey, to your question on ownership of EVs, is the goal for ownership? Our goal is to provide carbon-free charging for electric vehicles at a discounted rate to what's available in the market. And that goal is basically providing carbon-free, lower cost fuel for electric vehicles. So it's not necessarily for ownership or leasing of vehicles. That's really at the discretion of the driver. Our goal is make that charging and fuel widely available so that everybody in our community has confidence that if they buy an electric vehicle, they can fuel it up with carbon-free, lower cost fuel that comes from the solar and wind electricity that EBCE is buying. Lastly, on I'll let Becky address a couple of things, and then Jesse, you probably have some stuff to add as well.
Thanks, JP. So what JP was just about to mention is that for the churches in question, we actually have a commercial induction rebate program that covers almost the full cost of installation of an induction range, up to $15,000 for the first 5 applicants. We have applicants in the door, but we're having a hard time getting them to follow up, so there's still time. So I would say drop me an email if you're interested in following up with this particular church. On to the question of federal poverty. I'm so glad you asked that because this is one of my favorite issues to rail on. The federal poverty level right now is just under $13,000 for a single occupant household. The qualifications for the CARE program to get help on your electricity bill is set at 200% of the federal poverty level. That means qualify for to qualify for CARE, you can't make more than $27,000 a year. And again, this is for a single occupant household. Contrast that with the median income of most Alameda County residents at $108,322. Again, if we want to draw the comparison I'm drawing, which is that using a federal poverty framework in Alameda County doesn't make sense, The federal area median income is around $65,000. So the area median income in our region is about $40,000 higher, which is why for our LMI program, we focused on AMI as the income qualifier. And we actually went up to 120% with lower incentives, because even though people may be at 80% AMI up to 120, doesn't necessarily mean they don't need help. This is an expensive county to live in. For the renter protections that we're building into the LMI program, it is premature for us to address that yet. Right now, we're targeting single family and likely owner occupied, but we've asked Block Power to come back to us in 6 months with a set of policy recommendations that they would need in order to roll out to renters. We're tracking work that's happening through the ACEEE on renter equity issues. We're looking at things that were done in the San Joaquin Valley building electrification pilots to mitigate forced displacement or rent increases for a period of 5 years after participation in a program. But we haven't settled on what recommendations we want to put in place yet, but we will be coming back with that when we have those recommendations.
And I'll just add that with regards to short-term leases for electric vehicles, where those are primarily coming from are through the transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft. And what we've spent a lot of time evaluating is the overlap between our renters in multifamily hotspots and drivers on transportation network platforms, and whether they are renters who are also originating their trips from our multifamily hotspots. And it turns out that there is a lot of overlap there. So the transportation network companies themselves, Uber and Lyft, have partnerships with short-term leasing companies. And those are actually for both of them in-house as well. And so a lot of the drivers who are TNC drivers are getting into electric vehicles via those short-term leases that are offered by Uber and Lyft. And they will absolutely need that fast charging infrastructure to be able to conduct their business. So that will be something that we're talking about, not just with transportation network companies and getting them to direct drivers to use our infrastructure in the future, but with others as well, to ensure that we have good utilization of these assets.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. I'll open the floor up now to questions from our members. Any members have questions, please raise your hand. Yes, Member Frank.
Thank you, Chair Bunsenberg, and thank you, EBCE staff. That was really great to hear about how much is underway, and just again, hats off to you guys for the amazing work that you're doing in our community. So some of the questions I have related to the private capital or private investment, and you mentioned a little bit of this, JP, but I wanted to just explore it a little bit more. I think right now there is a tremendous amount of private equity and venture capital headed into renewables. That can be community solar. It's pretty much anything and everything having to do with kind of renewables and transition energy is being funded right now. So I wanted to hear from you, JP, how that's intersecting with EBCE right now, and how is equity being upheld as that intersects, particularly with our unique mission of environmental justice and DEI goals. And then I had a question about slide 4. There, it mentioned vendors with regards to the, the implementation of the Salesforce platform. And so I just wanted to understand a little bit more who those vendors are. You had also mentioned bringing customers to a partner. So just kind of wanted you to explain a little bit more how that works. Are we like giving people access to, like how are we, obviously we're shepherding and kind of building this wonderful database of information about our ratepayers. How is that then intersecting with, external, as you say, vendors or partners, and how do we again ensure that those central goals around environmental justice, equity, inclusion, diversity are kind of withheld, in those transactions. And then you had mentioned targeted programs for frontline communities and listed quite a few of them. I wanted to understand, it's wonderful that these are all going on and, really understand it's obviously there's a lot of challenges here, with ownership and so many other thorny pieces that we have to untangle as a community. When can we expect some reports on the effectiveness, impact, and outcomes of the programs that you mentioned? Kind of how far along are they, and how will you be reporting out on them? And somewhat related to that, Becky had a question about the EE pilot for low income EE. You had mentioned a 2% reduction. I was just wondering, I didn't relatively know what that 2% meant. Was that what you expected? Was it more or less than you expected? What did you guys learn from that? And where's the program kind of going from here? So just want some more context on that. The cooktop lending, just a small question. Is that for private homes or is it for commercial kitchens? What's really the purpose of that program? In terms of medium and heavy duty presentations, Jesse, yes, I'm going to be the first one to say I would love another presentation on what that looks like. And, definitely, particularly as a representative of a consumer goods company here in the East Bay, would love to learn more about how that, how companies like NUMI can support that, how we can get our, 3PL excited and involved. So would love to hear more about that. And then I want to echo the call for the community innovation grants. Really, it was a $240,000 line item and was just meted with tremendous, appreciation and success in the community. So really want to encourage you guys to be thinking about that in the future and building that into the program. I think it's a wonderful way to create, dynamic and, partnership and goodwill and, really opportunities for grassroots, collaboration with the community that will help us untangle some of these, thorny issues. And then finally, and I'm not sure if this is what Jessica Tovar was referring to, but, last year there was the $100 million tranche of funds for the Environmental Justice Resilience Hubs that the governor signed into the budget, and just wondering if EBCE is planning to engage with those funds. Thank you.
Do you want us to address these as they come?
I say yes, address the questions as they come, since we have, I think I saw 4 members have raised their hands. And so just for the sake of making sure that you're not overwhelmed with all these questions, I think it's fine to just go one at a time with these ones. And also just a note as well, I know we're at the 8 o'clock mark. So just for the next questions from the members, if we can keep them succinct as possible. Just wanted to say that, so appreciate it. Go ahead, JP.
Okay, will do. I'll do my best. So thank you, Member Frank, for these questions. So on the private capital, those dollars are being invested according to the programmatic rules that we're putting in place, right? So when we are rolling out a program, say the Resilient Home Program, and customers are investing dollars, those customer dollars are being invested, on the assumption that they are going to either receive lower bills overall or some better service, like in the form of resilience with that program. And then Sunrun is also basically paying prevailing wage for the multifamily affordable housing and abiding by our local hiring requirements for single family housing. So I think the private capital that we're trying to bring into the county with our programs is also operating under some regime of how those dollars are going to be invested. On On the vendor question, that is specifically related to Salesforce. An example of that is with Actera, who we are now working with for our Induction Cooktop lending program. So what we're making available through Salesforce are, think of them as interfaces or portals where our vendors or partners can provide information back to us about how our customers are interacting with a program. And so what that does is it means it reduces the kind of shuttling back and forth of data from a provider that we then have to clean and put into our system so that we have a clean record of what's happening with our customers, because we expose something to a vendor that they can log into with authenticated login. So we know exactly who's logging into the system to say, customer X, JP has borrowed a cooktop on the 1st of March, and he's going to return it on the 14th of March. The only thing we're giving them is the name and a date of rental and a date of return. And so it's a very limited kind of role restricted access to the data so that we can kind of give to a third party a tool so that they can help us track what's happening with our customers and their participation in our programs. And then we're taking on more of the activity, like an automated survey out to the customer that says, how was your participation in this program, your satisfaction level, what have you learned? As opposed to us saying, hey, can you do this survey and then provide us that information back, which we then has to ingest and clean. And that actually creates a lot more churn and effort on our part than like exposing a limited amount of data to them so that they can interface with our system. So that was kind of what I was trying to refer to on the Salesforce slide about the interaction with vendors. And the term vendor is a very commercial term. That could be a third-party nonprofit partner. It could be Sunrun. It could be somebody else, but that's so forgive my use of that term, but it's kind of commercial in nature. But we're trying to make it easy for people to work with us to provide services out to our community. On the targeted programs for frontline communities, there's a couple of efforts there. The baselining of activities and participation rates in Salesforce that we're trying to track will give us a baseline of those efforts. There's been, as you know, a bit of work now for a while on both the in-plan kind of analysis of benefits that are coming out to customers through our programs. That's ongoing, and we've built a better way to analyze the effectiveness and benefits of our programs across the community. And we still are working through the analysis tool to provide that report to you all. And then, there's the kind of equity metrics workshop that we've been working on for a while. And I'll put my hand up. I have not pushed that along as fast as I would like. So that's an ongoing piece of work that we have on our plate to kind of, work with the community on those equity related metrics. I will push it to Becky on a couple of these, the 2% reduction in the cooktop lending question. And then I'll just quickly and note that your request to Jesse on a medium and heavy duty presentation specifically, I think that would be good. On community innovation grants, I think Nick raised with the board a couple of meetings ago that there are dollars coming to us from some of the investments that we've made, some of the PPAs that we have signed, and those are dollars that we expect to put out into community innovation grants. We'll be bringing that back to the CAC and the board. And on the $100 million for equitable building electrification, I think that was like $922 million or something like that. We actively are working with our public policy team across both state and federal funding activities that are underway, both trying to kind of look at and evaluate and potentially influence to make sure that state dollars are made available to CCAs as implementers, and certainly looking at federal dollars as well to see how we can bring those into EBCE's territory specifically and to CCAs more broadly, because there's certainly a lot of dollars on transportation, buildings, efficiency, and equity. And we want to make sure that we and our cities and our communities are ready to take that, because you know exactly how it's going to happen, right? Somebody's gonna be like, we need this in 24 hours, right? And we need to be ready to kind of to be ready for that. And a lot of this programmatic work, I think, puts us in a good position to do that. So I'll pass it to Becky and Jesse to answer any other questions that were raised.
Yeah, happy to. So on the LMI pilot, I would say that 2% is right in line with what we were hoping to see. We weren't sure we were going to see anything. Part of that was due to the fact that it was COVID environment. And so we were looking at residential homes where a lot of populations were now finding themselves sheltering into place. The savings calculations did adjust for that to the extent that they were able to, but it still does show us that particularly low to moderate income customers can respond to signals to reduce their energy during peak times, which is a question. How flexible is that load for that customer segment? How able are they to shift it? And the other thing that I will note for the Induction Cooktop lending program, we're targeting single family customers on that, or not actually single family, we're targeting residential customers. It can be anyone in the residential space. I'd be willing to entertain commercial applications as well, but it's usually a different power of technology. So the technology selections that we've got are geared for residential customers. The objective of that program is really to just give folks hands-on opportunities with Induction so that they understand it's not electric resistance, that they get demystified, and that they would be more likely to actually purchase an Induction cooktop for their next kitchen remodel or even in advance of a remodel. So Jesse, hand it to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back and give a presentation specifically on the medium and heavy duty goods movement. I had just noted how low we were on time and didn't want to get into too much detail. Plus we have this tree outside my living room window that is making, like, it's blooming and making my throat itch like crazy. So sorry, I'm just having like a coughing attack over here. But we have so much going on in that space through a couple grants and some board approved budget where we're actually providing technical assistance to targeted fleets. So it really warrants more time than just a few bullets and talking points.
Thank you all. Appreciate the response.
Great, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and go to Member Lutz.
Yeah, thank you. This is very impressive and certainly appreciate seeing it and hearing about it. I'm a little, along with Audrey, a little disappointed that there isn't something more active from EBCE on helping drivers purchase or lease EVs, maybe some sort of extra incentive there if possible. And related on that, you said the direct charge DC fast charge incentives were oversubscribed in 4 minutes, which makes it sound like there's an awful lot of demand for it. And I would hope that you are exploring ways to get more funding or more programs to be able to offer more incentives. And just, it seems like the demand is massive there. On the offer on the medium and heavy duty goods movement, if when you do a presentation, if you could invite some of the community-based organizations that are impacted by that and the air pollution from medium and heavy duty goods transport, that would be very beneficial too, to have them, invite them to the presentation as well. the projects and the plans and what you're doing here is really great, but I'm thinking that it would be good to get input from the communities you're trying to reach and work with them on, strategic plans or goals so that it's not just picking up what's available and what sounds good to EBCE staff and, funds that are available from wherever, but find out what the communities actually want and figure out how to get it. Had another question, or more just follow up on the resiliency hubs, more concern about that. There's a lot of interest in community resiliency hubs with microgrids, so people have some place to go if there's, power shutoffs and a bad air day or something like that. So just look for more follow up on that. And in the interest of time, I'll stop.
Thank you. Yeah, so our transportation electrification work has really been focused on providing charging infrastructure to potential vehicle owners. In the past 2 years, we were under the correct assumption that vehicles themselves would actually be constrained. There hasn't been a lot of vehicles in the market, and we're continuing to see really long wait times on vehicles. And so these are long lead time activities, and building a strategy to provide charging infrastructure so that anybody who buys or leases or gets a vehicle has a place to charge. And certainly, focusing on publicly available DC fast charging so that people don't have to own a home in order to know and have security that they can charge their vehicles has been a part of our strategy for the last 3 years. So I think, we're certainly thinking about all different ways that we can provide security and, to potential owners about access to charging is top of mind. And as other opportunities emerge, then we'll look at them. But this is really what we've been doing over the last, couple of years and what we have top of plate right now. As we continue to evolve our programs, then there are other activities that we may want to evaluate. The DC fast chargers being oversubscribed in 4 minutes. This is, it's true. There's a lot of appetite for building charging infrastructure. And our goal is, as Jesse mentioned, is to be key to that role. We have an idea and an estimation of how much charging needs to be deployed in Alameda County based on state available tools. And EBCE wants to be central to that. And so that's exactly the plan that we are building. How do we provide sufficient charging capacity in the county to ensure that anybody who wants to buy a vehicle and drive a vehicle has access to charging across the whole county, so they can have confidence that they can always fill up, just like everybody always has confidence they can fill up with gas. We need to make that equivalency with electric vehicle charging, and we want to play a key role in that. And scaling that business model and scaling that deployment is 100% core to our model in the publicly available charging space. The community input that was received in the local development business plan was key to that. That was a 2-year engagement, around getting input from the community. That's something that we've been implementing for the last couple of years. And we're constantly in forums, with communities around what's happening across the spectrum in our programs. And it's also something that we want to continue to engage in ourselves. But it's not like we're doing this just off of the good ideas that we have. There's been quite a lot of input from the community about the activities that we are undertaking. And on resiliency hubs, the point of our critical facility program is to provide solar and storage resilience across all of our communities. So our first solicitation for deployment of solar and storage is for 4 cities. We plan to deploy that across every city who wants to participate, and that will provide that level of resilience to publicly owned facilities across the service territory. That's something that it will take a while. These things don't happen overnight. And our goal is to make sure that we've got facilities that are up and online across all of our communities, providing resilience to our residents in an increasingly unstable grid environment. And I think, Jesse, you've probably got a few other things to mention on this.
I'll just add that with regards to community engagement, EBC is leveraging the community engagement activities of our Joint Power Authority member cities. So for example, the city of Oakland had an extensive community engagement process in developing their equitable climate action plan, which called for the development of a zero emission vehicle action plan. And through that process, we are very much engaged. The city is leaning on our medium and heavy duty goods movement activities that will be included in their zero emission vehicle action plan. So rather than EBCE kind of reinventing the wheel, where our cities are already engaged in bringing the community together to identify priority initiatives that they'd like to see in their communities, which have an action item around deployment of charging infrastructure to support EV adoption moving forward. We are leveraging those existing plans and efforts. And that goes with, along with the medium and heavy duty goods movement sector as well. We are very engaged in the West Oakland Community Action Plan Port and Freight Subcommittee and the other WOCAP advisory committees and subcommittees associated with the outcome of that plan that was co-developed by the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project and the Air District. The other thing I want to mention is with regards to medium and heavy duty goods movement, and I'll get more into this when I come back to give you a more in-depth presentation. But we actually have 3 communities in our service territory that have high air pollution issues that are associated with the movement of mobile sources of pollution, specifically from medium and heavy duty goods movement. And those are called AB 617 communities. And this is West Oakland, East Oakland, and the Tri-Valley area. And so we know where the goods movement vehicles are actually originating their trips from, and they might be traveling through communities like East and West Oakland or doing business. But we need to remember that only some portion of those vehicles actually have a footprint at the port. And there's a lot of vehicles that don't even ever visit the port. And they're originating from places that are in the far eastern or southern parts of our service territory, but impacting other communities. So we really need to take a comprehensive lens at how we support the transition of medium and heavy duty goods movement vehicles to zero emission vehicles. And that's very much the focus that we have now, is being very comprehensive in how we address that so that we can deliver ultimately the biggest benefit to our most vulnerable populations that have the biggest impacts.
All right, thank you so much. We'll go to members. We'll go to member Swaminathan next. I do want to just note it is 8:20, so I want to check with everyone, all the members on currently, if we are okay with continuing, or if we're okay also with shortening discussion time. Just wanted to make sure and be respectful of everyone's time, since I know that there's a lot of information, so questions could go on very long. So I just want to make sure how we as a group are feeling at this moment. Yes, Member Sutter.
So I'm willing to sit for a little while longer and hear this. I mean, we don't always have time to hear all of the great things and get our questions out. And I think depending upon what other folks say, it feels like we're coming up with new agenda items for the future, which seem important to do. So I'm fine with hanging out for another half hour or so.
Okay, excellent. So why don't we go ahead and go to Member Swamenathon. After that will be Member Pacheco and then Member Landry.
Okay, I did want to appreciate the comprehensive presentation. I didn't have any particular questions per se. Just wanted to say that. And I have to drop off actually. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Swamenathon. Member Pacheco, you're next.
Sure. Yeah, first I just want to say this is a bunch of amazing work. Thank you, JP, and your whole team. I have like 2 evergreen comments and then just like 2 or 3 very short or probably short answered questions. When I echo what some public speakers and other members have said about always keeping equity in as a focus, and it sounds like you guys are working to do that, so thank you. The other comment is, and I've brought this up before, is JP, you and your team have proven yourself to be expert at how to leverage minimum amount of agency funds towards a large amount of EV charging funds. And vehicle electrification, transportation is our #1 greenhouse gas emission in Alameda County. It's important that the agency be a key member in addressing that. The thing I'm concerned about, it's an ongoing concern, is that our limited LDDP monies should not be spent on that. I'm not saying that you and your team shouldn't work on it. You're proved yourself to be experts and will continue to, I'm sure, but that the funding for those projects come out of a different bucket. That the members of EBCE, the cities, they all are required to address this issue themselves. Funding for this should just not be come out of the LDBP. It's my thought on that. And I have a couple quick questions. I hadn't heard before, I missed it, I guess, on a previous meeting about strategic decommissioning. So there's money from the CEC to come up with a pilot project and cost that out, but there's no funding for the project. They're going to take a look at what's turned in and then consider funding it. That's one question. Is that, if I have that correct, that's the question. Then the other thing is, I brought up a couple meetings ago, and I think Lisa who sent a link on the SURF, the Community Economic Resiliency Funds. It was 400 million at the time, or 600 million at the time, and the governor, I believe, has proposed to add another 400 million. So it's a pot of $1 billion broken down into regions. We are the San Francisco Bay region. We don't even have a convener chosen yet. But once that starts happening, EBCE should be a key player at that table. And as it's supposed to have a regional approach, like with electric vehicle electrification and natural gas decommissioning, it's going to be a place where there's going to be a lot of resources and a chance for you to really power up what you're working on here. So my question is, have you or anyone in the agency started participating and looking at the SURF project? And then my third question would be, so keeping equity in mind, you know, a lot of this is being targeted, as it should be, to like more disadvantaged communities. And I know you guys are thinking about it and you may have some personal knowledge, but is there a particular expert on how you help build up disenfranchised communities without increasing gentrification? Is there someone, is there some organization or group of academics you're particularly talking to and figuring out how to implement these projects without causing gentrification? And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Ernie. I'll answer a couple of these questions and then pass it off to the team who's smarter and more capable than I, for sure. So I think thank you for noting that we're keeping equity as a focus, and that's something that we're proud of and continuing to work through. On the TE investments, appreciate your opinion that, you know, this funding should not come from the local development business plan. However, building assets and investing in the local community and driving good jobs to build those clean energy assets, that is a local development activity. It's not a utility scale electricity procurement activity. It's not a billing activity. It's a local development activity. So I think, you know, look forward to the conversation around how we're allocating local development funds, but this is the team that type of investment will come through. So on the strategic decommissioning, I'll let Becky answer that one. On community resilience hubs and looking at, you know, funding and opportunities there, as I mentioned, that's something that we are collaborating with our public policy team to be aware of all the funding opportunities. I think the best way to be ready for a funding opportunity is to have projects to fund, which is exactly why we've been spending the last couple of years building a portfolio of local resilience projects that we plan to build out, and having those ready and, you know, essentially shovel ready as we continue to move through these procurement activities is kind of the best way to be ready to pounce. On the keeping equity in mind, you know, as Jesse mentioned, we're doing a lot on the TE side for equity. And as Becky has mentioned, you know, we have a plan in place for our low moderate income electrification program to think about how we're working with communities and mitigating gentrification impacts to renters who are living in you know, multifamily affordable housing, as well as other types of renters who are renting in single family applications. But I think I'll stop there and leave the team to answer other questions as well.
Briefly on the question for the CEC grant, the CEC has a pattern of funding things in 2 phases. A similar prior grant experience that happened in our region is the Advanced Energy Communities grants, where they do a first phase around planning and then they do a second phase around deployment. So the CEC themselves has signaled that they hope there will be a second phase of funding, but their budget is controlled by the legislature, not by a commission as it is in the CPUC. So there is some uncertainty as to whether or not they'll be able to get and allocate the funding for that, though they're hopeful that they will. I will also add that if you're interested in following up with some organizations that are good leaders on how to avoid gentrification, I have a lot of organizations I can hand you in the energy efficiency space, building electrification space. So I'm happy to follow up with you on that if you're curious.
And the only thing I'll add to JP's talking point just about leveraging external funding is, you're right, we've been really good at it to date, and we've been good at it on a number of fronts. You know, as JP noted, the leveraging table that you saw is not all inclusive, and we've actually gotten more grants than what was actually listed on that table. And moving forward, we all know that there's a lot of money coming down the line for all of the distributed energy resource program areas that we've been talking about tonight. I think it's important for everybody to keep in mind that the money is coming through different funding agencies, and each funding agency is going to have its own requirements around the different projects that it wants to fund. And so that's something that EBCE keeps an eye on to make sure that if we're spending staff time and if we're coordinating actually putting a grant proposal or some other type of funding proposal together, that it's competitive, because it takes a lot of time and energy to put together grant proposals that the funding agencies ask a lot from proposers. And we need to make sure that the time that we put in for the funding that we go after is, you know, a good cost benefit, because even if you get the grant money, then you have to also have reporting requirements that come along with the grant, which also takes a lot of time and energy on staff And so we as EBCE and this team are very strategic about keeping our eye on the funding and going after opportunities for external funding where we know it's going to deliver the biggest impact to the community possible. We're going to get the biggest bang for our buck with regards to staff time and energy and effort, and what comes on the back end with regards to reporting and tracking the grant, because usually those are multi-year efforts. So I just wanted to note that.
All right, thank you. Next we have Member Landry. And then I also want to ask if any other folks have questions that they'd like to ask staff. I do see Mary and Jim, your hands are up, and I know you've had them up before, so just wanted to know if you still have questions or you're able to take those down. All right, thank you. So if any other folks have questions, please put your hand up. Otherwise, and in the meantime, I will give the spotlight to Member Landry.
Yes, and I'm going to be brief. First of all, kudos to JR and the staff. I think you have presented a very comprehensive rollout with many elements here. I know that you will continue to come back with further updates to both the Community Advisory Council and the communities that we serve for further input as the rollout continues. A lot of my questions were answered, but I did have one question, and that is regarding solar power and battery storage. I'm just curious. I suppose that we are continuing to make more investments in battery storage as more solar power becomes available. If you can just explain that, that process to me, I would appreciate it. I'm a big advocate of renewable energy. So if you could explain that to me more, I would appreciate that. In other words, how adequate is our current battery storage system for the amount of solar power we anticipate to have in the future for our communities?
That's a big question. So let's see. Our Resilient Home program is all focused on solar plus storage. For single family residents, there is a multifamily affordable housing category that we are trying to pursue. And we are also investing through our procurement team in utility scale storage assets. And we have recently launched a battery management tool that our procurement team is currently operating some utility scale batteries on to kind of manage our wholesale exposure. Is the level of storage in Alameda County sufficient to meet the amount of solar that's required or meet our zero carbon targets? No, that's not the current case, but we're certainly trying to build a programmatic strategy that will add as much storage to new solar projects that are installed as possible. I will admit that there are some regulatory constraints around adding storage to the 40,000 solar systems that are already installed in Alameda County. The current net metering rules kind of mean that people are better off not touching their existing systems and adding storage to them. And that's a statewide net metering rule that we have been working to protect at the behest of our community. That's not to say that we're not focused on figuring out how to add storage to existing solar systems. That's been a big push in our Resilient Home program, is to try to find ways that we can be effective in providing customers with an opportunity to add storage to existing solar systems, because that would be great. We would love to have storage associated with every solar system, residential and commercial, installed in our service territory, because really what that means with time of use rates is that people would be economically benefited by absorbing the solar energy in the middle of the day when we have plenty of solar energy across the state, and then dispatching that later on in the evening when we need that energy. So that's certainly something that we're really proactively trying to find a solution for. And as the market evolves, we'll continue to be on top of that. So we are similar to you, committee member Landry, very bullish on storage, and want to make sure we see as much of that installed as possible.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so I'll just give one more opportunity for any folks who may have a question or a comment that they'd like to make. All right, with that, I want to say thank you so much to JP, Becky, and Jesse for your presentation this evening, and appreciate the conversations that all of our and dialogue and questions that our members have presented, as well as from the public. So with that, we'll go ahead and close item 5 and go to item 6. So staff, any CAC member and staff announcements, including requests to put items on future CAC agendas. Is there any items that folks would like to see on a future agenda?
Well, I think the items that were mentioned in the previous minutes that were not brought forward, I would like to see the presentation that Tom Kelly or a discussion on the bright choice. And the other one was the discussion of the stipends, which I understand was going to be part of the finance committee, the budget. You have a budget and finance committee or a similar committee, and that committee got canceled, but there was a report that was generated in that committee.
All right, thank you, Member Landry. So I'll work with Adrian and Olivia to see how we can put this on the agenda and work with staff to put those items. I did have a question that related to the presentation for Tom Kelly. If this is of interest for our members, is that possible to have a member of the public give a presentation in this manner, or does it have to go through staff? Mary, I saw your hand up, and also Member Pacheco. So if you're answering my question, I'll go with you first. Okay, perfect.
So when I was chair, we always have the option of bringing in anybody to present to the CAC. It does not have to go through staff. So I think that is eminently possible. I would encourage you and Olivia to figure out and work with Tom to determine what the next steps would be from something like that. I mean, I think we heard that the numbers are high, they're out of step with other ones, and we heard a little bit from staff about why that might be. I don't personally want to hear another thing that is just reiterating things that have been said and known, but if there are actions that Tom feels are important for the CAC and the board to consider to reduce those numbers moving forward and how quickly we can do it, I think that would be really beneficial to hear. So
perfect. So yeah, I'll go ahead and Adrian, I'm not sure if Tom has reached out to you before, but if I don't know if I've seen an email from him. Okay, perfect. So if we're able to do an introduction with me and Anna Olivia so that we can see how we can get a presentation from him, and then we can make those considerations for either the next meeting, or if we're not certain he hasn't asked at this time, maybe we can look at May as well.
Great,
so,
thank you. Yes.
With that, we'll go to Member Pacheco.
Yeah, this is not necessarily a presentation, but it would be great to have a report on the amount of union man hours that have been created by all of EBCE's works to date. And I know that MCE did something like that years ago at one point, and that was very helpful at that time. I know Cal CCA aggregates numbers among its various members. It would even be great if that's something that Cal CCA can do for all of its members, but it would be great to see EBCE's numbers on that.
Perfect. If it's all right with you, Member Pacheco, maybe we can get a report for a written memo from staff and have that distributed amongst the members.
Yep, that would be great. Thank you.
Perfect. So if staff, if we're able to get some sort of memo, I think that'd be fantastic, and we'll get that distributed out to the ACAC. Any other items we would like to see added to the next agenda?
I would just like to hear more about the medium and heavy duty program. I can also follow up with Jesse, one-on-one if that makes more sense. I know that these agendas are often packed, so.
Okay, yeah, if there's something that maybe have those initial discussions, and if there's something from those discussions you'd like to see an action item potentially, or something that would be of interest that's brought up to the board, maybe we can have those discussions on placing that in the agenda. With that, just want to make sure I'm checking the chat. Any other members who would like to see, or staff who would like to see an item placed on the future agendas? Okay. Then I think with that, we can, I don't think we need to do public, do we need to do public comment on this item? I don't believe so, no. So with that, if there's no objection, then we can adjourn tonight's meeting. I just want to say thank you to everyone for being patient with me as as interim chair for the evening. I'll be coordinating with Anna Olivia, and we'll see who will be chair next meeting, but I do appreciate Anna Olivia a lot for running these meetings. So we'll see. But yeah, so anyways, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.